listening to Mr. Gregory Agid. That is an album that he recently put out called Jamz, available on Bubble Bath Records. Now that features Mr. Joshua Starkman on the guitar, Mr. Max Moran on the bass, and Mr. AJ Hall on the drums. It was wonderful to have sat down with Mr. Agid some 2 months ago on a rainy night in New Orleans and get to talk to him about his upbringing, this album, his future endeavors, and how he got into playing that wonderful gig that he's held now for many years on the esteemed Frenchman Street, which, if you haven't been to New Orleans, what are you doing with your life? Really? Go to New Orleans, and if you happen to be there on a Tuesday from 6 to 9 at the Maison, you can catch Mr. Gregory Agid playing with his quartet. And so, of course, at the end of this episode, I'm going to play another track from that album so you can check it out, as well as include links in the bottom, of course, the portion that is the description of this episode. I always encourage you to like, subscribe, give some feedback, and come back for more. Thank you so much for listening. And please help me welcome my guest, Mr. Gregory Agid. Mr. Greg Agid, what's happening with you, bro? Thank you for being on the podcast, my man.
Good evening, Claudio. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you on this rainy, beautiful freaking night in New Orleans, man.
You know, the whole last month, it rains every single day, but in the afternoon. And it's like such an inconvenience when it rains at like 2 o'clock because I'm either like going to work or going to a gig or whatever. But it's like it's always pouring when I got to like walk. And so it's really nice that it's like actually raining outside while we're inside at night.
Yes, not during the day. That's definitely right, man. That's definitely right. We'll see how tomorrow is. I got to be driving back to New Mexico. So my man, tell me how you've been, how your album has been. First of all, congratulations. It's nice to like hang with you and see you since you released your second official album, Jamz.
Claudio,
is that your very first?
This is my third CD.
Damn, tell me about it, bro.
Isn't that crazy?
That's
3
amazing.
CDs.
That is tight.
In artist life, I'm 3 CDs old.
That's beautiful, man.
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
It's pretty cool.
How does it feel doing it the third time, man?
Honestly, or should I give you like the
Come on, bro. Be 100%. No, be 90% honest with me, I should say.
You know, I'm relieved it's over because it just takes so much work and effort while you're in it.
Yes.
And while the process is very enjoyable, it's also very exhausting. And so it's nice to see a project from beginning to end and know that now you have a moment to yourself.
That's right.
And to prepare for the next one.
Yes, indeed. So, you recorded this at Esplanade Studios?
No.
Is that right?
So check this out. So we're part of this amazing record company called Bubble Bath Records.
Label mates. Right? Yeah, bro.
It's like the coolest thing since sliced bread.
Bubble Bath.
Bubble Bath.
In the house.
So Bubble Bath works with Neutral Ground Studios.
Yes.
So I've been playing with my band for about 5 years now with this configuration.
Yeah.
And we play every Tuesday over at this club called the Maison here in New Orleans. And we just kind of like, we wanted to go in and try this studio called Neutral Ground and just like have like a jam session. That was kind of like the idea behind this whole project. And we felt that, because we play so much, we had like this kind of like this vibe from just playing all the time. So we wanted to capture like what an actual gig was like at the Maison. And so we went into the studio and we're just like, let's just play. And then we'll have some documentation. And then it was like kind of killing. And so we decided to put it out on the record.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like that.
Just like that. And so that's how that's the concept Jamz was just like, okay, cool. Like we're just going to have a jam session. Like it's just going to be us jamming. And then I don't know how the basketball thing came into.
I was just gonna say. I mean, it seems, at least from my opinion of watching that, it was like almost like it's just like another day. You know, it's just like every other week where you get together with your friends and you play basketball.
Yeah, something like that. Except, man, let me tell you, we cannot play basketball. It was one of the most pathetic things that has ever happened in all of humanity. There was. I
figured that about Josh, but I don't know about the other guys. Or how was Josh? Was he?
I mean, there's actual like you could have like stats on how bad each one of us was, like to the bottom, and we'd be fighting tooth and nail for like that first spot. I mean, my knee was hurting for about 3 months after we did that, just because I jumped up like 10 times more than I do in a normal day.
Wow. That's amazing, bro.
And we did it all because we love music.
Now, it's definitely an experience to put out your third album, but then to be doing a little bit of like, you know, promotion in that way was pretty fucking tight, you know, and it definitely caught my attention early on. What was the idea with whose idea, I should say, was the basketball thing? Okay,
so, I mean, you know, jazz records, it's like almost like a parody on like the seriousness of jazz.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, like I feel like every jazz record's called like, you know, like Depth, inner space voyage, or the ninth realm of reality, or something like that. So we were just like, you know what, like we're just gonna like literally go in and just kind of like just have this like chill attitude towards it, and we're actually gonna make fun of this whole thing. And so I was like, cool, we're gonna have a jam session. So it was, originally I think it was gonna be called like Jamming with the Gregory Agid Quartet.
Oh yeah, okay.
And then I was like, man, wouldn't it be funny to like call like jams, and then we would like all be like on a bottle or a jar of jam, and we'd have like our different jams, like Josh Jam or Max Jam or AJ Jam or Greg Jam, I don't know. And then I was like, wait, hold on 1 second. NBA jams, like a jam session. We like get together and jam. I don't know. So I thought it would be funny to have us all wear basketball gear and do promo shots for the record like that. Because it's funny, because like I guess like every other style of music, like they just do crazy shit. So why not? Whatever.
I love it, man. I love that idea. So you recorded it at the Shed. Did you have it mixed and mastered here as well?
It was mixed and mastered by a gentleman named David Farrell.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of you who don't know, David Farrell ran a studio here in New Orleans that was like the studio. I believe it was called Ultrasonic. I hope that's the right word. I hope it's the right name. But it was like the studio. So anyways, Katrina happened, and so Dave moved into his house, and he does amazing work. He's got like Grammys like all up in his attic.
Wow.
And so he does a great job with the records, and he actually has mixed and mastered all of my CDs.
Wow. And who did the album artwork? Did you have a friend do that?
So John recommended a graphic designer artist named Caroline Mendez. And actually, she killed it. She did such a great job. I never met her. I just like Facebook messaged her.
Damn, okay. And we were just like, are you down?
Yeah, we talked via Facebook. We had like maybe like 2 phone conversations, and like the first draft, I was like, yeah, that's pretty spot on. Like she totally nailed it. She did a great job.
Yeah.
And so again, it's like there was a video game called NBA Jamz back in the day.
Yes.
And it was one of my favorite video games. And I remember like in college, actually during Hurricane Katrina, I was staying in Baton Rouge. And my friends and I would just play NBA Jamz all day because Katrina had just happened.
Wow.
And so that was always a video game that was like, you know, in my mind, or had some significant impact in my development. So jam session, we get to NBA Jamz. And I was like, man, it would be funny to have like all of us dressed up like basketball players, and then we would have like jazz stats. You know, like
yes, I freaking love that, man.
Because it's like, you know, basketball players, like they're like, man, when you play a video game, like the guy's got speed and the guy's got like 3-point dunk and all this kind of stuff, and it's like cool, like because these guys are just basketball players, and we're like, we're musicians, we have those powers too, you know, like I can play fast, and like I get a 9 on speed, and So, we figured we'd just have some fun. It's cool because like you can be creative with the music, but you can also be creative with like the whole like packaging, and there's so many dimensions that the creativity can manifest into.
It's a beautiful thing to think about and to actually execute as a musician, because we're so used to just like getting it done, and most people don't like the business aspect at all, so don't even want to play with the idea of like doing more work than they have to, and then you're like, you can be creative with that too, like you can have fun with that, but yeah, man. So what was the idea behind the tunes? Are they just like tunes that you guys play? Obviously playing for 5 years, and really more than 5 years, right? Because I mean, I remember coming here 6 years ago, and you had that gig going on. That was how I met Josh. Not, I should say how, but the opportunity that allowed me to not just meet Josh, but meet you and meet Jason and Darian Douglas. And that night happened to be Darian's birthday, so we all went out to a named $2 Tuesday club and happened to meet everyone in the community that night. But you know what I mean?
Such a fun night.
That was after your gig, you know what I mean? So
it's really cool. It's like having played this gig for so many years, I feel like I hear so many stories of people who've moved to New Orleans, and like I moved to town, and like my first gig was I came to your gig.
Yes.
And you let me sit in, or like whatever.
Yeah.
So
man.
So it's like really cool to
have that relationship with the city, right?
Totally cool to have that relationship.
So tell me about that for a second. How did the Maison gig come about? Like, where did that?
So I got the gig because the Maison had just opened up, and Frenchman Street was like this new frontier.
When? Bring me back to what year?
2010. All the way. We need like a whole tone scale. Heart going right now.
Pass me one of those guitars, I'll get it now.
Just someone edited in right here. Yeah. But so it's 2010. It's Frenchman Street. Like there's empty lots everywhere, and there's like Snug Harbor and Spotted Cat, and basically like the only people who hung out on Frenchman Street were like musicians and crazy local people who love music, and it was like this special place where you could be creative. And so the Maison opened up. I got a gig with the singer, and it was my first gig, my first weekly gig, and we played that gig for about 5 or 6 months, and then Mardi Gras came around. They double booked us on Tuesday. Everyone wanted to quit, and I was like, no, we can't quit the gig, because this is going to be a good gig one day.
Wow, from then.
So then they all quit, and I ended up taking the gig, which was killing. And it's been great, because I've had the opportunity to play with cats consistently every week. I've had a chance to like work on different music, meet different musicians, and it's been a really great opportunity, actually, to and play the music that I want to play for an audience every week.
Yes,
that was pretty cool, and it helped me a lot in my development as a musician. But yeah, back to the tunes on the record, all the tunes, like pretty much, if you were to play the record down, that's kind of like what it would be like at a gig. Yeah. There's no clapping, and sometimes that happens on the gig too.
Right, man, right.
But the record is like just like a gig. It starts off with like AJ and Josh like talking shit, banging, and like the gig is like a kind of like a spontaneous thing where we do like, we collectively know so many songs that you can have these moments of like freedom, and then like it kind of just snaps into like, oh cool, we're gonna play this song now, we're gonna play Caravan, we're gonna play Smokey's Dream or Banjo Noir. So playing with a band so consistently allows you that kind of comfort with each other as musicians, and understanding where something is going. And so we wanted to recreate that on Jamz
and just capture it.
It
seems like it's more that vibe, within even the arrangements that you guys do. Like I was going to ask you about what the idea with the arrangement of Caravan was, but I'm sure it was just you guys getting together and vibing and having played that song so many times, right?
When you you can compose something and tell people what to do, and that's
fine and good.
That's totally cool.
Right.
But then, with like a weekly gig, that's a different situation than, and especially having to play for people, you have to compromise. Like you have to play music that you want to play, and also that people want to hear. And so with the grooves, like a lot of that comes from Josh and AJ just kind of messing around.
Yeah.
And a lot of these, I like to think my band has a lot of personality.
Yes, very much so.
Everyone has a very strong personality in my band.
And just to give a shout out to all the cats in your band, that's Josh Starkman on the guitar that we're talking about, and Mr. AJ Hall on the drums, and Senor Max Moran on the podcast, who was earlier on the podcast, but the badass bassist. Oh man!
And these dudes are super killing, awesome musicians, just great dudes. And so, they all got these distinct personalities, and so a lot of these grooves come from like sarcastic moments when they're like, maybe they're trying to fuck with me, and it's just like a way of like, okay, cool, like this is it, we're gonna go with it, see what happens. And I think it's also too, like, I wanted to really showcase what the cats do well, and to me, like the groove aspect was something I really wanted to highlight in this record, because I feel like a lot of jazz, it was just a good representation of how we wanted to blend New Orleans music with more like a modern kind of vibe.
So you're originally from New Orleans, right?
I moved here when I was 12.
So tell me about where you're from.
Where I'm from.
Where you from?
I grew up in Hawaii, man. I grew up on the beach.
Are you serious? But you were born in Hawaii as well, or where were you born?
Man, I have this crazy. It's like it's not that crazy, but it just sounds crazy. I was born in Texas, from San Antonio.
What part? Oh, okay.
And then when I was like 2, I moved to Dallas, and then I moved to Hawaii shortly after. So I grew up in Hawaii.
Military?
My dad worked in hotels.
Uh-huh.
Claudio, man, we gotta get a beer, man.
You keep telling the people I'm gonna get another set of beers first. Come on now, bro. Come on.
Yeah, grew up in Hawaii, man. It was a beautiful place. Edit. Damn. It's gonna be so ratchet.
So you grew up in Hawaii. Where in Hawaii did you grow up? I think these are probably even turnoffs. I don't know why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Right? And I think they're turnoffs, bro. That's what I'm saying. All right. So as you were saying, my man.
So I have this crazy, not so crazy story. I was born in San Antonio, moved to Dallas, moved to Hawaii, and I spent most of my childhood in Hawaii. And then I moved to New Orleans when I was 12. So that's the extent to which I'm from New Orleans.
Yes. Okay.
And I feel like I have to clarify that.
You moved here when you were 12.
Yeah, because people from here.
Yeah.
They're from here.
They're
I'm not from here.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
But I'm from here.
You grew up here. Yeah. So where's your family from?
My mom is from Switzerland. My dad is from France. And so they're just
Are you first generation American?
First generation American.
Do you speak French in Switzerland? In Swiss a little bit or no?
I do speak a little bit of French. However, my French needs some serious work. So if anyone that wants to help me, please reach out.
Surreal,
please.
Yeah. I've always dreamt of having a deeper connection with France because of most people think of it as my last name now, but it's actually my middle name, Toulouse. And is after, of course, my dad's favorite French painter, Henri-Marie Raymond de Toulouse-Lautrec.
Wow.
And, of course, the city, Toulouse, and the connection with that. But anyways.
We should have a bubble bath trip to France.
Oh, that's a great idea,
I think it's a great idea. It started here on this podcast with Claudio.
Hey, let's realize that, and then we'll do a podcast with all the bubble bath people in France.
I think that's a good idea.
Do that, bro. I have a couple friends in Paris and in some other cities that we can definitely.
Summertime in France is the best.
Really?
Yeah, you've never been?
I've never been to France, man.
We gotta go. Let's go.
I was in Europe last year, and I wanted to go from London on that underground train to Paris,
Yeah.
and then go from there on to Amsterdam to go see Thomas. But I ended up doing the route a different way. But yeah, a little expensive going on the train,
You gotta fly.
Yeah, you gotta fly, bro.
Fly, man.
Flying in Europe everywhere is way more. It was way more affordable. It's like Spirit out here, or like the less
totally.
expensive airlines out here. They can be shitty and terrible, but they have those in Europe.
Riding the train is its own experience. You know, it's like a whole nother vibe.
It is. Yeah, I haven't done it yet, but I want to do it. I've definitely ridden trains, like in Spain. The fast train, you know, is an experience.
Yeah,
That's tight, you know. But
Bubble Bath does France 2019.
I like the idea. I like it, bro. We'll make that shit happen. What about in Switzerland? You said Switzerland, right? They speak Swiss, or what is the language there? It's not Swiss, right?
So, a third of the country speaks French, Italian,
Okay.
German.
Wow.
So there's like 3 languages happening.
Shit. And your mother speaks the French side? Is that how her and your father met?
I believe they met back in the day
In France, or did they?
in Monte Carlo.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's some shit. Man, my parents have a crazy love story meeting because my dad, you know, he was like an artist in Colombia, and he had a lady that he used to date that liked him but was dating a guy at the time, but she was working at a school, you know, and she commissioned, they were looking for an artist to do a mural.
Mm-hmm.
My dad was just out of university, out of the Escuela Bellas Artes, which is like an art conservatory in Medellin, an arts conservatory, but he, you know, majored in art and painting and stuff, and painted the mural there at the school. She commissioned him to come do it, and then she introduced my dad to her other coworkers, and one of the coworkers was my mom.
Cool.
And he was just like, I don't know who you are, but you're going to be my wife. It was the first thing he said to her. And she was like, motherfucker, you crazy.
That's usually how it goes. I feel like those are like the best situations.
Those are the best situations. Yeah. A couple months later, they got married. And it's
You
like,
and me? Yeah, that's a thing.
It worked out. I don't know why, but I think you're going to stick around for a while, young lady. Yeah. All right. So, where'd you go to high school? I mean, or I should say you first came to New Orleans, or did you come outside of New Orleans first, or where?
So I grew up in the great jazz metropolis of Kenner, Louisiana.
Nice.
And I'm not being sarcastic here
Yeah?
because
Tell me.
Jonathan Batiste from Kenner
Really?
and
Wow.
the Marsalis family is from Kenner.
What?
You know what? Like, I'm telling you, man, it's where all the
shit.
cats are from, Kenner.
Wow.
But that's like a little sarcastic because it's just like by the airport, you know? But yeah, so I grew up in Kenner,
Yes.
and I like started going to a jazz camp here in New Orleans, and it was killing because like I met some dudes who could really play from a young age. Like, it was crazy.
Is that where you met Alvin Batiste?
I met Alvin Batiste, who was my clarinet teacher, and I met students like Jonathan Batiste, trombone shorty, Christian Scott, Sullivan Fortner, like, you know, this
Jesus.
crazy list of musicians.
Wow.
And I just like grew up listening to these cats like just sounding amazing.
Yeah,
You know, it was just
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I just remember like always being like, damn, like that looks like so much fun. I want to do that. So definitely like New Orleans brought that into my life. You know, I was always into music, but that was like, whoa, sick.
So, how old were you when you started studying with Alvin? As a 15-year-old, 16-year-old, or what? When did you? I should say. Let's preface that with saying, when did you start playing the clarinet?
I was 10 years old when I got a clarinet for Christmas
From your mom or from your dad? From both of them?
from Santa. What do you mean, mom?
Who is?
Who's mom?
Who?
Mom and dad, they don't get me Christmas presents.
What was music in your family? Were either one of your parents musicians or musical? I should say.
I feel like Santa has bestowed a new legacy on the Agid names. I mean, there were like a couple musicians in the family, but like not.
Yeah.
I don't come from a musical family. No.
Gotcha. You're the first like dedicated musician in your family.
Yeah, that I know of. I think there were like some amateur musicians. Like my uncle like had clarinets, but he like at one point used to like practice, but he kind of like messed around with it. But he was not a musician, you know. But I definitely have like.
But that's where the clarinets come from.
Yeah, they come from my uncle.
Nice.
So I have like a very artistically inclined family that like values the arts.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
is like actually very supportive of all that stuff.
Yeah.
But no one's an artist, and so it's cool like being in New Orleans, actually like meeting like some of these cats who like come from musical families.
Truly, right.
Like
Oh yeah.
Dyson, or
I
mean all these cats, Jonathan Batiste, Troy, and so it was. I feel like I moved here at the right time to like kind of like I was behind all those cats, but like I came in with just enough time to like understand what was happening and like see what was going on and like see what was really happening from a young age. And so those are some like really cool experiences that like I always think of and like actually really enjoy.
Yes.
It definitely made me like helped me get to the place where I am today.
Yes.
But like working with Alvin Batiste, man, was like super cool. Kid Jordan, Ken Jordan, like these guys were like super dedicated musicians. They loved composition. They loved like modern music. They loved like classical music. They just had this like all kinds of music. Mr. Bat played funk and all kind of stuff, but they were just great teachers, and it was just like the perfect environment to kind of like learn how to play, or at least learn how to appreciate the spirit of the music, or even like understand what the spirit of the music is. Yeah,
it's definitely an experience to be around music, but when you're around special musicians, like the impact that it has on your life, definitely elevates, right? It's like
totally. To have those like mentor relationships, or to be in such close proximity to someone who's doing it
such greatness
on a high level, and a great example of like what this thing is that we call artistry or musicianship or anything like that. So it's just like really cool to be exposed to that from a young age.
Yes,
and to internalize it. It's like sometimes like you can't really explain what's happening, but by just being around you, like absorbing it.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's also like an experience to have a great teacher from an early age, because when you get connected with someone who has such a deep relationship with not just the instrument but the tradition, it's a profound experience. I was grateful and blessed to have an amazing teacher from a young age as well, who was a studio musician and well respected and cut his teeth amidst the LA guitar scene, and was in the studio. He did studio sessions alongside Joe Pass and all those guys and shit like that. It's like heavy shit, but to have someone like that from an early age in my life, when I was about 14 years old, on, was like, he became my uncle. What I'm saying? Like I see him now and I call him my Uncle Mike. I don't call him, Mr. Anthony anymore or anything like that. But that leadership and that guidance and that relationship with someone who speaks from such a place of not just understanding and experience, but love for helping push you along.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you did those camps. Were you then, after those years, or were you even at that time going to NOCA, or were you going to Kenner High School, or what high school were you going to?
Man, I went to Jesuit High School here in New Orleans, a good old Catholic conservative all boys school. And in the afternoons, I would go to this Jesuit school in the morning. Learned a lot of things that were very valuable at that school.
Yeah.
We won't necessarily go too into it. but I actually, like now in my life, I'm truly appreciative of that experience, because it definitely helped me in a lot of ways. But then I would go to NOCA in the afternoon, which is like this polar opposite experience where you're like hanging with like students from like all types of like economic backgrounds, wearing all types of different clothes. Like everyone's super weird, cool, and like it's like this whole other vibe. And so I did NOCA in the afternoons, and that was actually, I really enjoyed that a lot, man.
So you did NOCA in the afternoons every like during the week, every week you'd go to NOCA as well as go to your high school? Yeah,
it was super stressful, man. It was like, man, it's funny because college was so easy because high school was so hard. And I went to like, again, like Jesuit was like not very supportive of my.
Were they Jesuits? Is that why it was called Jesuit?
Oh yeah, it's a Catholic school.
But it's a Catholic Jesuit school.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah,
Totally. So they weren't very supportive of me leaving half a day, which is somewhat understandable, but whatever. And some of the teachers would give me a lot of shit for no reason other than that they were just assholes.
As teachers everywhere do, right?
Yeah, sure. Good,
there are
some
good
teachers,
and bad teachers. I'm saying,
but some teachers don't. And
Yeah.
that was like the cool thing of like really kind of meeting someone like Alvin Batiste is that he was like totally not. He was like the opposite of like that type of teacher,
Yeah.
He was like a really great example, and it was like again like just being able to be mentored, just see someone do is like this super invaluable experience where you can just like again you can read about it in the book or you can like see it be done.
Yeah. Push that mic a little forward, right? To see it be done. I was listening. Go on.
To see it be done, yeah. And again, just like, but also seeing that like you could have like male figures, like to me, Alvin Batiste was like my grandfather, man. Like I didn't really have much family here in New Orleans, and so he was totally like a grandfather figure to me.
Yeah.
And so like hanging with him like was important to me on so many different levels, like from just being educated musically to being educated at like what being a man was.
Yes.
Some great stuff, man. And he was like a super wise and inquisitive and smart and intellectual and just like one of the coolest dudes ever,
Did you know about the tradition, like his lineage or his like the weight behind his name at that point? Or was he just like your clarinet teacher? And you found out later.
No, it was always pretty like you're studying with Alvin Batiste. Like these guys were gods.
Wow.
Like because again like they were all like kind of older,
Yeah.
And like
how old was he? I mean, he was in his later years, right? You were.
I probably met him when he was like 66 or 67.
How old was he when he died? Do you remember?
He was 74.
So you studied with him until he passed away.
Maybe I probably met him like in his early 60s, mid 60s. Yeah, I met him when I was 12, and he passed away when I was like 20. Oh man, 2007, probably like 21.
Were you still taking lessons with him at the time or not anymore?
Not really, but I was definitely like seeing him all the time.
Sure. Around him, yeah. We don't have to nerd out too much and get into it, but I mean, like, well, I know that he was very well respected and kind of known for his.
All right, this guy was the coolest dude ever.
Tell me,
Tell me. Horrible way of describing it, but I mean, actually, it was like unbelievable what he did in his lifetime, and how, I mean, he was one of the first African American students to graduate with a master's degree from LSU. Composition, so he came through again, like just 1950s Southern bullshit, but he just loved music so much. Like he was just such a curious person, and as a teacher, I mean, again, as a musician, he accomplished so many things from like doing modern jazz in New Orleans in the 50s, like with the American Jazz Quintet, playing like bebop and things like that, like totally like Bird and really epitomizing that style to going through this musical transformation where he at some point was playing like fusion music and was playing like super modern jazz, and he went through like this whole artistic shift in his life, while also being an amazing teacher. And he was an amazing teacher because he understood that not everyone was meant to be the same, and he also understood that there's like a community. He understood the concept of like this music being passed down from the ancestors, and I think he was a very spiritual man, and he would like very subtly like hint at this like deeper kind of stuff with us. Like a lot of his songs were like very esoteric, and he would always like it's like super hip quotes like control your subjective mind. And as a 31-year-old, you're like, damn, that's deep.
Wow.
But he's like,
control your subjective mind. What I mean, he was saying that stuff to you as a teenager. What was that like? Did you have to digest that, or were you just like?
No, he had so many things. He'd just look at me and go, ignorance in action is a powerful thing. I'd be like, huh?
Ignorance in action is a powerful thing?
Yeah. Like, you'd be like a little kid, and you're just like, you know, whatever, like beating on the drums, and you don't play drums. And so you just like be like, shh. Ignorance in action is a powerful thing. You just be like, huh? Sometimes you'd be like, you know, because your mama didn't have no stupid children. That was like,
Your mom.
but he was like, it was funny too because like I had just moved to New Orleans at that point, so I was like hypersensitive to like this New Orleans accent.
Yeah,
and it was just like, yeah. I'd never heard anyone say "mama" before, you know. Or when I first moved here, I remember the first time I heard someone say "y'all," and I was just like, "What?"
It's probably the one word that I've taken over the most from New Orleans and taken it back home to New Mexico with me, because like everyone's always like, "Yeah, bro, you get into this especially whenever you're announcing, you get into this New Orleans accent because you always say y'all." Like, how y'all doing out there? What's going on, people? Come on, I was like, all right, shut up, Claudio. It's like,
I actually think it's the most efficient and progressive word in the English language because it's at this point it's gender neutral.
Yes, sir.
So,
yes,
you know, New Orleans got that right at least.
Oh snap! Now you went to Loyola, is that right? Or you went to Tulane? Excuse me. Where'd you go to university?
I went and studied classical clarinet, which is
much different than
I learned to be so proper.
Mr. Agid.
That was a whole crazy experience because I sucked so bad at the beginning. It was like really pitiful, and like I had never really like.
You say you suck so bad, but I mean, like, what do you mean, like your classical technique or what?
I had no idea what classical music was. Like, you know, you like listen to it and you're like, psh, yeah, I can do that. But then like you actually get a classical teacher and he's like you play one quarter note of your etude and he's like, stop, what's that? Like, you're like, what are you talking about? I played the quarter note. And so there's like a whole nother approach to the music when you're studying under a classical teacher.
Yes.
And
yes, very much so.
It's very much geared towards technique, and there's like a lot of instrument, you know, learning just how to play the instrument.
Sure,
you know,
without a doubt.
And so, and also like in classical music, there's a lot of precision, you know, like required. And so a lot of the focus of being a good classical player is like having the technique and the dexterity to do what the hell the composer wants you to do.
Yes.
And then you also have to infuse musicianship on top of that. But there's a, you know, I feel like coming up from my more jazz like upbringing, the technique wasn't stressed as much. And so,
and the precision,
and
right?
the precision was definitely not stressed as much.
I know what you mean.
Like and I don't mean that negative. I don't mean that in a judgy way. But
there's just a focus put on it.
Yeah, there's a whole
with your
other
lessons,
level of focus.
with your execution, with how you did your grade of how you did is like based on you didn't hold that note that long enough.
Yeah, or like your embouchure is messed up. Like that's not the way you play clarinet. Like this, like you know, like there's only one way to do it.
Wow. For that reason, I was always grateful and understood why at the university I went to, the University of New Mexico, there was a classical degree, and if you wanted to be a jazz studies degree major, you had to go through, really it was a classical performance degree with concentration, quote unquote, in jazz, but really was a classical, you know, thing with a couple classes in jazz band you took. But the technique you learn as a clarinetist, as a trumpet player, as a saxophonist, as an upright bass player, you know, those things play very directly into how you actually play the instrument.
Totally.
As a guitar player, obviously, the classical guitar is a totally different instrument from the jazz guitar. And everything from technique to, the actual instrument itself. And so it's always an experience to understand and to be able to talk to people about that different world. You know, like someone like Wynn Marsalis, who has won Grammys in both the classical world and the jazz world, has been someone I've always admired. I mean, you know, when I was in high school, that book, I don't know if you've read it, The Letters to a Young Jazz Musician book.
It's a great book.
Amazing
Killing
book. Man, one of my high school teachers gave me that book, and it's still one of my favorite books that I've read and gotten into. But that experience is certainly something that I've cherished and been grateful for my university studies, because paying attention to precision and to execution through trying to honestly recreate what's not just on the page but the best version of that.
Yeah.
Right.
It's hard.
Yeah.
And then to do it every time consistently.
Every fucking time, man.
That's no joke, man.
Yeah, man.
But what's interesting is that I think that every style of music has a set of techniques that the musician must master.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not necessarily all the same.
Mm-hmm.
You know, again, like the function of the clarinet player in the orchestra is to play the clarinet part. Play it really fucking well.
And blend, right? Yeah.
And blend and all this kind of shit, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's really difficult. But the clarinet player's responsibility in the jazz band is to play the shit out of whatever you have to play.
Yeah.
And then you have to compose some shit. So you have to also understand music. You have to understand composition. You have to understand, all this kind of stuff.
Big time.
Claudio, man,
yeah.
I'm about to go into it. No, because I'm having these flashbacks of just like that transition between actually learning a certain thing, like classical music, right? Being really and being really taught from a classical perspective, but also working with someone that does not understand jazz and seeing that disconnect between the two communities. And I think there's this misunderstanding of actually how technical and how difficult jazz music is, and actually how sophisticated and complex and all the kind of shit classical musicians think their shit is. Right, so I'm just gonna go into it.
Oh yeah, go on.
And so I'm just I hate this. There's this saying, man, it's good enough for jazz, right? And that is the dumbest fucking shit I've ever heard in my life.
It's good enough for jazz.
And I was told that many times in college, in my classical school, good enough for jazz and all that kind of shit. And I was also recently playing with an orchestra, and the conductor was just this orchestra was killing orchestra, amazing orchestra, world, one of the best orchestras in the world, literally. But they couldn't play the swing music because the shit is hard and it's not classical music, and it was just so not swinging. And we played one tune and I'm thinking holy shit, this is horrible. And the conductor is just wow, that was lovely. Oh, good enough for jazz. And I was just
wow.
I was holy shit. I was you did not just say that. That sounded like shit. So it was interesting coming from a perspective of music coming from musicians who actually again are great musicians, and I'm not but just come from the music from a totally different perspective.
Yes. Yeah.
And same thing for the jazz dudes, they have a whole nother perspective on music.
Good enough, right? Good enough for classical music.
It's total bullshit.
Yeah.
The shit's hard, man.
In general, man.
It's difficult to do anything on a high level.
Anything, that's right.
So
even pop or even singer-songwriter or even whatever it is, man.
It's really hard.
All of them take their equal amount of attention and hours and 10,000 hour, workload.
Dude, you got to put in the work. Gotta put in the work, man.
Gotta put in the work.
Because this shit is not easy.
Yep.
Being an artist is the constant hustle.
Yeah, man.
Because you gotta put in the work. Because if you're trying to make money off of this, you gotta put in the work.
You gotta truly lay down the foundation that will allow you to bread the fruits, bear the fruits, I should say.
We spend so much time learning music and learning how to be creative within this art form, and that's killing. That's great. And that's actually my favorite thing in the whole world to do, but you can also use that creative power in your life, and it's you spend so much time working on this music. let's get some people to hear it, you know? Like, the people need to hear this shit because it's good.
Yes.
But, you know, and people want to be exposed to good things. People want to hear hip shit. People want to hear the new stuff. You know, they may not think it. You got to tell them because they will listen.
Once you hip them, yeah.
Once you got to get them hip to it.
So, speaking of new, is it something that you think about for maybe the next album? I mean, I've heard your second album, but I haven't heard your first album. So going back, I mean, is original music, or is that idea of like bringing in your quartet to play some of your own tunes something you think about doing?
It's a little bit of everything, actually.
Yeah.
Like there's a nice little, you know, there's standards and there's also original stuff on all the records. In the last record, in Jamz, what I wanted to do was like, there are actually no original compositions of ours on the record, but we have a couple like really hip tunes that like not a lot of people have heard. We have a composition written by so when I moved to New Orleans, this guy was playing bass at the jazz camp. His name is Brian Kazare, and his dad was the great composer and arranger Waddell Kazare, and he was like the string guru, the arranger guru here in New Orleans. So Brian wrote this tune called Smokey's Dream, and Brian's an amazing bassist, amazing composer, and he writes some of the hippest shit I ever heard. Anyways, he wrote this tune called Smokey's Dream. I love this tune, man, and it's like a killing tune that I love to play, and I feel like it's just a great composition. And you know, like back in the day, people would record each other's music. You know, it was like not a big thing to like just like, yeah, let's play like let's play this dude's tune. Let's play the saxophone player's tune.
Back in the day when Jimi Hendrix would record freaking Sgt. Pepper's, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, cool. Like, actually, like, Brian, can I record your tune? Cool.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Thank you so much. I love your tune. Like, let's just play it, you know?
Right.
And it's cool, too, because with these tunes, you can also, because no one knows them, there's like you can make them your own a little bit more. And you know, like a lot of artists become known for like playing certain songs, and they might not have written them, but they definitely like were the first people to like hip them to those badass tunes, you know. And so I hope that I think it's important that we all record as much as possible, and we got to record each other's music and you know help each other out. And
I agree. That's
play
beautiful.
on each other's records and all that kind of stuff.
Hey man, that's a reality. I've got one of my dear friends who sadly is not paying as much attention to the music, especially the composer side of his life right now, because he's focusing on some other things. But I've got a song of his that I play all the time, and I'm thinking about recording it. And why the heck not, man? Yeah, it's definitely an experience to get into other people's music and love it and form a relationship with the way you play it or your band plays it, and then capture that. So, speaking about original music, man, what is when you sit down to write? I know, obviously, as with most people, it's different every time. But what is your creative process like?
My creative process is a clusterfuck, but it's the most organized and undercover like clusterfuck you could ever imagine.
Okay.
Honestly, the creative thing is like. It works in different phases, and there's certain parts of your life where you have more time to dedicate towards certain things like composition or technique or whatever it is, studying or whatever it is that you're trying to do. And so it's funny because like at this point in my life, I've actually been like busy with like creating my own nonprofit, teaching, and doing a lot of things in other creative realms. And so it's like actually like my creative process right now has been like really like kind of like focused on those things. But it's funny because I had this like, I'm like, okay, cool, like this next record. So then, okay, so that's the creative process. My energy's been like directed in that way for a while now. And it's like, it's time to wrap that up. You know, so like, cool, like got some money in the bank, I'm cool. Did some, you know, had learned a lot, had a great experience here. Now it's time to get back to work And that whole process is actually like, to me, it's actually like a long process. It's like, you know, you got to get your mind back in shape, and you just have to learn to listen, really, is what it is.
Yeah.
And so when you're busy, it's hard to listen.
Yes.
But it's clearing space, you know? So I think, you know, the creative process for me is first having an idea, creating an intention, making the space, and then doing whatever the fuck you have to do to get it out.
To get it out there, yeah. That's
But I tend to be like very organized, like
it's a problematic way of or like a problematic strategy of fixing it, right? Not a problematic, I should say it's an organized way of thinking about it, like throwing the idea out there, and then just like by all means, when the deadline comes, or from whatever deadline you set upon itself to
it's
get it
so
done.
important as a musician to, like, within your insanity, to find organization. Like, you have to understand how you work, and then find out how you can thrive within what you were given.
I can squeeze the juice from it.
Yeah,
yes,
totally. And everyone can do it. It's going to look different for everyone, because we're all different.
Yeah.
But we all can reach the same place.
That's right.
And so, for me, that I have to be very organized, and I have to be very structured and regimented. Like, I like that a lot. Like, I'm gonna practice for like 3 weeks, 9 to 11. Every day I'm gonna shed at that time. Then I'm gonna have lunch at this time, and then I'm gonna, like, you know, like that's just the way I operate.
Yeah, you create that routine.
But at some point, like, everyone has to implement some type of structure like that on themselves, because I think the greatest trap you can fall into as an artist is it's not good enough, or the perfectionist kind of thing. And I think the important thing about creating deadlines and structure is that once you reach the time limit, it's done.
It's done. You turn the chapter and you move on.
Yeah, and like and like, you know, again, like, you think of the artist who has recorded one CD versus the artist who has recorded 150, but you only know 2 of them. You know, and so as artists, it's really important for us to, like, things just have to be good enough.
Yeah.
They don't have to be perfect, because, like, if you keep working on the same thing over and over, like, you actually, like, you lose sight that the painting is done. You know, and I had that experience, actually. I went to a Maison exhibit in Paris. We were talking about France earlier. And it was amazing to watch that, like, he had at one point of the exhibit, he had painted the same painting every day for like a year almost. And so there's like 300 paintings of this, like, bridge.
Damn.
And they're all a little different. And it was like, man, like, some people would have just, like, painted that one thing. It would have taken him 1 year to finish that one painting.
Wow.
But he just did 100 of them, and they were all different. They were all perfect, and, like, some, you know what I mean? And it was just cool to see that process.
That's like the execution of the Mozart to the Beethoven, right?
Yeah, totally.
It's like someone that sits and just, like, blah, 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 and puts it out.
Might be good, might not.
Yeah. Then the other guy just, like, sits there and just, like, hones over it and edits and edits and edits and
then, like, after 10 years of work, you got one record.
And the other guy's got 150.
Yeah, no, seriously, because it's you know, this guy named Seth Godin. He's a motivational, creative, enthusiast type hype man. But he's like, he always says that the only person that had ever read all of his books was himself. And, you know, he's like, I put out 40 books, and I'm the only person that's ever read all 40 of them. Like, let's just be real here. And he's like, but because I have 40 books out, I have 40 times the chances of you figuring out who I am, versus, like, the guy who put out one book.
Very much so. Yeah.
And so part of being an artist is, like, you have to also put out quantity.
Yeah, man, it's something that I see exhibited daily for my own example of what an artist could be or should be, through my raising, at least, you know, because I didn't even know this, man, but Max Moran was telling me earlier as we were podcasting that his father was also creative and is a visual artist and stuff like that. And so growing up around that, you just see someone who works every single day and makes something every single day.
Yeah.
And not just makes something, but, like, doesn't think about the hours that he puts in. Like, it's a 40-hour work week, because he's his own boss. And so he's just, like, focused on producing every single day and week it's just like it's exhausting for me now to see how often he's producing. Like, he produces so much that he's got to do it in other mediums, and it's just like, wow, put your head to the grindstone. I'll be like, sometimes I would ask him like, Dad, I've hit this creative kind of block, like a writer's block,
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, you ain't got no block, just fucking shut up and get to work.
Yeah.
And it's the truth, because if you stop thinking about what's hanging you up and just like get back to working and like figure something else out, or like move in another direction, or turn the page and start anew, or if you're exhausting something there, then move on to another medium and refresh,
Totally.
or whatever, but just keep moving. Yeah.
Again, the creativity manifests itself in many ways.
Oh yeah. Oh
So-
yeah, it does. Oh yeah.
But again, it's like, just, you got to stay in shape, and I think
time.
that the more, again, not everyone operates this way, but the way I operate is I just, I got to be in it, man. Like, and
Yeah.
I got to feel comfortable, and I got to feel in shape, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and there's something about those deadlines and being regimented that like I thrive off of.
There's also something about having a regular gig every week that you can kind of use as a platform to often practice those things, right? Or throw things against the wall and see if it works or not, right?
Totally.
It's,
It's a great opportunity. It keeps you in shape.
Yes. Oh yeah.
You're never like not playing a gig.
Every week
never
you got
not-
something. If you're at home, you're working. Yeah.
Always working.
I love that, man. I love that. Yeah. I don't work as much in Albuquerque as much as I used to when I was going to school there and when I was making a living just playing guitar.
Mhm.
Especially now that I'm making a living more so doing even art. But the opportunity for me to have a Wednesday jam session that I host every single week, it definitely has offered me the opportunity to, first of all, play every single week.
Yeah.
But beyond that, throw ideas against the wall, or just catch people when they're in town. Like Willie Green comes to town, it's like, all right, Willie, let's do something on Wednesday in Albuquerque. Come on, got you, bro.
Because again, like part of being a musician is like you got to be with the people,
Yeah,
and
man.
you got to be out there. Like
Yeah.
you can't really be an artist and like hiding in your closet,
Come on. Yeah.
You gotta be out there and be seen. At some point, the work has got to hit the light. Like you don't be you can't become, you can't have your art appreciated.
Yep.
It's like sitting in the closet.
I appreciate and kind of value the tradition of comedy in that experience, because it's like they can't write their material without the people. It's not like they can sit at home and just work on their craft and write great jokes after honing them in for a while. No, it's like they have to throw the shit against the wall.
Yeah, and the audience is equally part of the art.
That's right. For them, way more so than for us. But the exercise of constantly presenting and having that opportunity, and so, shall you take it, to push yourself. It's like it can be that opportunity to throw ideas against the wall every week,
Totally. It's an opportunity to practice.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Big time.
And just again, you can't get good at something if you do it once a year. You got to
Yep.
do it all the time.
Yep.
Kobe,
Yep.
shoots baskets every day. All that kind of stuff. Why not? We got to play gigs.
Yeah. That's right.
Gotta
We do.
play.
That's right. So what? This is kind of a question that I've been asking a lot of the people on the podcast. What does jazz mean to you, or what does jazz mean, for you in your daily life?
So jazz is this amazing thing, and let me preface this by if you have an issue with the word jazz, I'm not, I'm just using this as a generic term to describe what it is that.
If you want to call it
experience is.
BAM or whatever, you can call it that.
It's
right?
deeper than the music, but the jazz is just a label we put on something deeper than that. And the experience of jazz is just this beautiful experience of like becoming a man of life, and it's connected to, there's so much history to it. You're part of a lineage, and you're part of these ancestors, people who came before us. They played the music, they were singing about life, singing about themselves, singing about their families, singing about their experience, and those lessons and songs and feelings get passed down throughout the generations. And so the musicians are like these like special people that like are kind of like the keepers of this thing, right? So that, to me, that's what jazz is. Jazz is like the extension of that thing, that intangible thing that music is. And there's different roots of that tree or branches of that tree.
Yeah.
It's all part of the same thing.
Yeah.
And so jazz is one group of people that hold that power, that space.
What does it mean in your daily life?
Oh man, it's everything, dude. Like, I wake up and jazz, and I mean, it's to listening to the music all day, to learning songs, to teaching it. And again, it's not about teaching jazz per se, but it's about teaching this mystical thing, helping people become themselves, and people becoming their best selves through this music, and understanding what came before them and what will come after, and how to better themselves, and there's so many lessons that come with this music. So jazz to me is the beginning of like this kind of like consciousness awakening for me.
Interesting. Wow.
As just kind of like, and through understanding with dedication and actually how to get better at something. And so like studying this music and learning how to play it and loving it was like definitely like the first experience in like expanding so many parts of my life. So on a daily, day-to-day thing, it's a huge part of my day.
Yeah. I can imagine, man. Now, what do you not just predict, but what do you hope to see yourself doing in 10 years?
What am I doing in 10 years?
Talking to that mic for me, bro.
10 years, excuse me.
It's all good.
Pardon me. In 10 years, when I am 41 years old, holy shit. In 10 years, when I'm 41 years old, I hope to be in a place where I still get to play music. I hope to be in a place where I can have a family and do that. I hope that, I think the greatest privilege in the world is to be able to play music. And I feel like everything that I'm doing now is in order to allow that to happen for the rest of my life.
Yes.
And I think that we all can make proactive steps in ensuring that we get to play for a long time.
Yep. Say it, man. Yeah.
And I think that's, the teaching and they're all like little tentacles of this octopus that is moving forward slowly, but it's still moving forward, and you got your gig arm, you got your study arm, you got your your teaching arm, you got your like shitty gig arm. So like you're always like taking steps in these different directions, but you're always moving forward, Yeah,
it's all helping move the process along.
Yeah. Claudia, it's raining again.
It's raining again and again, bro. It doesn't stop. I appreciate you coming on this podcast, my man. It's great to talk to you about the record, and I congratulate you, my man. I'm definitely going to put some links in this podcast so people can check it out and listen, as well as, of course, with your permission, we'll play some of the tunes, maybe some of my favorite tunes from the record.
Dude, Jamz is the best record ever.
And people got to go check it out.
It's
today.
It's super
right
swinging. It's super jammy. And it's like, if you like jazz, this is the record for you. If you hate jazz, this is the record for you.
I love it, bro. I love it, man. So, we'll keep an eye out for you, man. I'll definitely be putting links to your website and stuff so people can follow you. If you're ever in New Orleans on a Tuesday night, go check this man out playing at the Maison from 6 to 9.
The Gregory Agid Quartet. What?
Woo! Go check that shit out. Thank you, my man. Bubble Bath Records for life. Well, at least for the next contract deal. Right? With love, my man. Thank you, bro, for coming on this podcast. Until the next time, my man, Greg, all right?
Thank you, Claudio.
Drive safe in this rain, bro. That was the episode. Thank y'all so much for listening. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this show, we're going to play another track from that album called Smokey's Dream, and followed up by the very first track you heard on this episode, which is called Caravan. So sit back and enjoy the Gregory Agid Quartet playing Smokey's Dream.
We're gonna get a Grammy.
Give him a beat.